Hello, guys and gals. Me, Mudahar, and I think it's safe to say the government is just committing a gosh darn crime in front of the people. Ladies and gentlemen, what if I told you the government is straight up redacting all the actual criminals and conspirators of the Epstein documents? You might be like, "Wow, that's a pretty big claim to make, Muda." And actually, I'm going to walk you through this claim right now at the very beginning. Much like the redactions, I'm going to rip the band-aid straight off, and I'm just going to show you a piece of this video that I think pretty much tells all. Now, I normally don't ask you to share a video, but I really want you to share this to somebody who's in a cult, somebody who just consistently will never question anything in society. Now, again, ladies and gentlemen, we've seen this law, the Epstein Files Transparency Act. Now, again, not to read the whole thing through, obviously, as you all know, it is supposed to literally disclose all of this information in a publicly searchable and downloadable format. The documentation of the detention or deaths, that should be there. No record shall be withheld, delayed, or redacted on the basis of embarrassment, reputational harm, or political sensitivity, including any official, government, public figure, or foreign dignitary. So again, obviously what you're allowed to withhold is obviously information that could contain victims or victim personal information, which we know based on at least one victim who actually had to report and say, by the way, guys, you fucking doxed me. That's brilliant. So that obviously makes sense. They're not going to be releasing CSAM material. Nobody wants to see that disgusting shit. And of course, they would not jeopardize an active federal investigation, provided that such withholding is narrowly tailored and temporary. And of course, depict or contain images of death, yada yada yada, contain information specifically authorized to be kept secret in the interest of national defense or foreign policy. Now, obviously, as we all know, literally the director of the FBI was like, listen, there's no actual evidence that Epstein trafficked anybody other than himself, okay? So, we talked about co-conspirators last time, and again, I wanted to really hammer that in because obviously, as we all know, if the FBI is not going to be talking about this, they haven't even said that there are still active investigations related to Epstein. So back in November, the Dem side of the aisle was actually pressing the DOJ about those co-conspirators, and that apparently it was inexplicably killed. And of course, this letter, you can read it right over here, where again they ask why they actually abandoned the investigation. The DOJ and the FBI formally closed the case July 2025, abruptly issuing a memo that declared without offering any supporting details that the DOJ and FBI did not uncover evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties. The DOJ and FBI's failure to investigate the conduct is a betrayal of more than 1,000 survivors of this multi-billion-dollar international trafficking ring. Many survivors actively assisted federal agents and prosecutors in the hopes of holding the perpetrators of these outrageous crimes accountable. Because yes, somebody who comes out and assists law enforcement because they think law enforcement can be trusted to do their job is now put themselves into danger, because what happens if somehow those files end up in the hands of the people committing those heinous crimes to begin with? So why are we kind of talking about this? Well, we know that the case seems to have actually been closed, and if there is a case, then I think it's safe to say most of us have no idea about any of it. Now, again, you can go to Epstein's actual file disclosure by going to justice.gov/Epstein/files, yada, yada, yada. Now, in this file, EFTA 000037629.pdf, you can see that the from and to is obviously redacted, but the subject is the pictures of the Epstein co-conspirators back from 2019. So you can see that Detective Blank with the NYPD FBI Child Exploitation Human Trafficking Task Force gets a bunch of these photos. Now, of course, the more we go down into it, I'm going to show you sequentially. You can actually view these files for yourself. In fact, I highly urge that you write these numbers down. Look at the bottom right of this. So for instance, if you see EFTA blah, 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 you take that number, you go to the Department of Justice, justice.gov/Epstein, and you can search the entire library for any of these numbers. So by hitting search, you can see that that PDF is there. You can slap that PDF up and read things for yourself. So don't just trust what I say, verify it for yourself, okay? And I showed you just now how to verify this shit for yourself. Now, obviously, the further we go down here, you can see that, whoa, another one of the conspirators has been blanked? What? Am I on black.com or the justice.gov, motherfucker? So, of course, the further you go down into the road over here, you can see that, wow, another co-conspirator has been blanked out. Another co-conspirator has been blanked out. Okay, heads are... who wants to do some betting games with me, okay? Let's do a poly-market bet. Do you think the next file I show you is gonna be censored? Absolutely! If you said no, you're crazy. So, of course, obviously that's blacked out. Wait, hold on. Surely all of them can't be black. Another one! Blacked out. And you can see by the numbering too, these are all blacked out in sequential order. But of course, let's go down one more. It's blacked out. Now there is one. There's one unredacted image in this, okay? Guess who it is? It's our buddy here. That's it. The co-conspirator. Of course, we know this dead man is absolutely not going to be doing anything. And that's the thing, right? When you're dead, there's not going to be much that happens. But remember, the law the DOJ is supposed to follow said that under no circumstance of embarrassment or harm to your reputation are you allowed to be blocked off. And remember, the reason I wanted to kind of look through if there was an active investigation, which doesn't seem like there is, all of those boxes have been ticked away. Now, I imagine, okay, the only possible reality for this is unless every single redaction here pertains to the nation's security somehow, okay? The US government, the United States, cannot keep its country safe if these names or photos are to be released. Maybe that could be a different thing. But the reason why this is such an important thing, and the reason why we have to talk about this, is that what the government is doing here is it's protecting whoever is behind this big black box. Now, whoever is behind this big black box, let's be completely real, is mostly a rich or powerful person, somebody who has some ways to attack people that, contributed to, having Epstein and this entire ring sort of exposed. Now, ultimately, there is no bigger protection than this, okay? When you protect somebody by redacting them, that means the rest of the world doesn't get to see who they are. Now, in the shadows, which this black box and this black box and this black box are currently sitting at, who associated with this fucking scumbag, yeah, these people get to basically go after any victim that they want. Now remember, in the last video, we looked at other emails from, again, the DOJ, where they were discussing other co-conspirators, and they got to a point where there were plea bargains being discussed. Now remember, when there's plea bargains that are discussed, generally that's when the government has so much shit on you that they basically throw a plea at you, okay? You want to be able to get out of, so you want to reduce your charges somehow by flipping on the bigger guys, yada, yada, yada. Now, I don't know the severity of some of these guys. Maybe some of these people could be bigger than Epstein. Some of these people could obviously be smaller, but we have no idea who the big black boxes are, okay? Now, the big black boxes have enough resources to go after the victims in this situation and basically make a mockery of one of the, I would say, best empires in the world. I know that Americans, people are kind of split on, but as somebody that has pretty much remained consistent on this topic, I have always told you guys I love the United States when it comes to how the country is structured, right? I think the founding fathers did an amazing fucking job with how many checks and balances they introduced, right? Unfortunately, checks and balances mean fucking nothing, zilch, zero, nada, when nobody is willing to actually enforce them or nobody is willing to follow through with them, right? Now, again, the Department of Justice is, in my opinion, committing a fucking crime. They are committing a felony. They are breaking the rules that were imposed upon them by the disclosure of these documents. It's bad enough that a shit ton of this stuff is already redacted, but it's filthy when the people who are allegedly committing some of the worst heinous crimes imaginable are being protected by the government that was tasked to stop them. The government that basically ran on wanting to stop these scumbags. So, part of these videos is also for me to go through these files as well too myself. It's almost like just my experience that I'm bringing to you. But when you read some of these files, I think it just shows you how depraved this network can get. So again, this is a set of files, EFTA 000210076. And again, you can see that obviously they've done their redactions. And of course, these are redactions that are very well done because you can't unredact them. You can see that obviously in this schedule over here from 9/10/19, message pads, okay? So for instance, for Jeffrey, for Jean-Luc. So of course, then they have descriptions. So 2x8 in this case is known to mean a teenage girl. So I wrote this message, Ghislaine Maxwell in house, and said, oh, this is funny. Message. Either GM rewrite it or she had me rewrite it. Potential teenage girl for him to meet. So on Twitter he said, with wife and kids, met Alan Dershowitz alone in house. No wife, no kids when he received massage. So in this case, they're not even hiding at least Alan Dershowitz. So this is an example of like, we're not going to redact shit because, you know, we don't care if Alan gets embarrassed out of it or he faces reputational harm. It's disgusting when you see this written over here in this manner. You know, getting a massage without, you know, his wife and kids there. He's alone in the house. Now, what kind of a massage was this? Well, I think in the same page, when you have teenage girl, I don't care if it's a happy ending massage or if it's not. It just shouldn't have happened. So, for instance, they talk about traveling with Jean-Luc to Russia, shared apartment with somebody who's redacted. I'm helping. So Jean-Luc or this person goes down, I'm helping blank find girls. Again, who are these people? I think we should know. Again, you shouldn't be blocking them, you know, unless there's a national security reason. And that's why I feel like the government should at least explain how blocking these names constitutes into national security. It just doesn't make sense. So, of course, they talk about people like Larry Summers visiting at the time. I helped serving drinks, food, very long night in LE upstairs, came in, looked like from event. And then, of course, you also have Prince Andrew. Apparently, remember the time they had breakfast with Jeffrey Epstein? I guess they were remembering here. Girl, young ballerina dancer like Curtsy Way. When Jeffrey Epstein introduced to Prince. Think this girl introduced by blank, unsure. Sexual encounter with Jeffrey Epstein. Going to gun, ask about partners. Or, I guess that's somebody else. It's not, I don't think that's literally a gun. In car, I say something to JE and then blank, I told her had disclosed, she say about what? Again, the interesting thing about this is it doesn't matter what side of the government you're on. Again, when you see blanks like this, you have to ask, no matter who it is. It could be the most leftist president of the world. It could be the most fascist president in the world. It could be the most commie president in the world. Ultimately, they serve you, the public. And you, the public, should be asking questions about who these blanks are. So that, you know, we as society can, excise them from our area. That's about it. That we can excise them from our society so we don't have to interact with actual pedophiles. The government, without a doubt, you know, if you look at these documents and you actually use a thinking brain, it does feel like, quite literally, they are protecting these predators that still exist and roam our society. So, of course, there's other people that they mention in here. Guy from Dubai, basically a sultan, who I guess Andrew Farkas introduced this guy to Jeffrey Epstein. So again, there are more people that are brought into it. And again, it's just more of a catalog, more of this journal that you can read these important messages, yada, 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 that are related to Epstein and a lot of the people that he worked with. So again, I ask the FBI director once again, there's really no credible evidence that you have that Jeffrey Epstein did not, you know, traffic people to other high-profile individuals. I would imagine sultans, possible princes, you know, prominent lawyers would be the ones that absolutely fall under that category. And again, you know, I just don't understand why a government would be so protective of this, right? Unless, of course, that government had some of its members compromised by possible blackmail. And the reason I mentioned possible blackmail is because there's also been other things that have sort of popped up in this entire situation too. For instance, you know, the people on the r/Epstein community have been doing some pretty great job digging at this stuff. Some of these files, they found Jean-Luc's gay pictures, for instance. And of course, they would contain, I guess, photos, files of Jean-Luc being a little gay. And the thing about it is, obviously, if you can imagine, this probably is just blackmail or something, you know. I guess being gay was a crime at some point, or, you know, maybe the guy was married or something, and I don't know. There's probably a lot of reasons, but having blackmail on people, especially when you're this powerful, is not fucking unknown of, right? So I can only imagine what kind of shit this guy probably has on some active members of the government or some people still in power, which is one of the reasons why I think this redaction job has been so poorly handled. The only saving grace in this situation is that obviously we all had a law that kind of passed and kind of twisted them into these files came out by really twisting the arms of powerful people. Unfortunately, I think it's allowed people to ask more questions than the people in power are actually comfortable with. I guess really, if you think about it, for the people that release this stuff, they thought, yeah, we'll dump some files, people will look at them and they'll forget. But then you forget that the world is covered in fucking autists, okay? Like crazy Tylenol huffing Americans. And they will look through these files and they will have reasonable questions to ask, as I have reasonable questions to ask why co-conspirator images are actually being redacted. I feel like not many people are kind of talking about this. You know, it's always people who look at the same sort of regurgitated information, but you have to really look into, you have to actually care about this situation and look into these files and actually ask the questions, right? There's tons of information that has been released, but we have to ask why these redactions exist. Like, for instance, one more thing was a Ghislaine Maxwell photo on Bannon's phone. So, for instance, I hope you're well. I'm helping out with responsiveness reviews, and I've been looking through Steve Bannon's iPhone on Celebrite. So that is the tool they use to hack into locked iPhones. God bless the Israeli mercenary hacking communities for that. As I was going through the images from that phone, I found an image of Trump and Ghislaine Maxwell on Bannon's phone. See screenshot with Celebrite attached. I discussed with Sunny and we wanted to flag this for you. So that image is fucking blanked. Now, why is it? Is it a national security thing that an image of Donald Trump and Ghislaine Maxwell was blocked? Look, if this was Bill Clinton or anybody, I'd be asking the exact same questions. I feel there's just this weird situation where, like, people are like, well, what about those fucking Dems? What about those Republicans? I don't give a fuck what side of the aisle you're on. If you're raping children, okay, if you're trafficking people, I want you under the ground. I want you in fucking jail. It doesn't matter. I don't care what your political beliefs are, bro. That doesn't matter to me, you know? Like, what's wrong with you? Why are we doing this goddamn, like, battle? You know, at some point, this is why, like, you know, people always shit on me for being, like, a fucking centrist, but, like, I'll be real, this is what true centrism is, right? It's like, actually be willing to criticize both angles of the situation, right? And again, it doesn't matter which side did what. All criminals should go to jail. We should all just come together and agree kitty diddlers have no place in society. Is it crazy to say that? I think one of the most gross things that I've seen is the level of unnecessary redactions that, you know, do make guys like Donald Trump look bad. So, for instance, you know, if you go to the actual DOJ's release website over here, this is from justice.gov. If you go all the way down over here, you can see that in this exact point on page 3 by Emery, Selly, Binkerhoff, and Abadi LLP, another friend was one of the many girls that had relations with a blank blank. She confided in me about her casual relationship with blank blank, definitely seemed to have a thing for her and going on about how he liked her pert nipples, blank, liked flicking and suck. So, you know, it's disgusting, but if you go over here to the actual, you know, document that was released probably back in, I would say, 2024, right over here, so January 8th, you can see that literally in this scenario, this document literally just referenced Donald Trump. So that was the actual redaction. They just redacted the president from this. And I thought that was illegal. That was not supposed to be allowed. And the thing is, like, no matter what your stance is, right? Like, if I was the president and I was in these documents, the last thing I would want is for me to be unnecessarily redacted. You know, because here's the thing, right? People are going to ask questions, but I think people ask more questions when you start to realize, why did you redact something that was already released to the general public unredacted? I mean, you went up there and even removed other names like Clinton, yada, 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 which again, also included Clinton, Prince Andrew, and Rich Branson. Like I said, I don't care which side you're on. Why are you blanking out names of people that are alleged to do some of the worst things? You said you weren't going to block it out because of embarrassment or reputational harm. If you're in these files, people deserve to fucking know. I think ultimately the end, no matter what, people like this should actually face some level of questioning by their people, right? Like, this guy billed himself on releasing these files. So I ask for the people that follow into this cult, why are you letting this guy just effectively get away with one of the most insane cover-ups that I've seen, probably of all time? Like, at least in our timeline, I guarantee you they'll be writing this shit in the U.S. history books as one of the dumbest, our generation's Watergate. You know, because it's what it is, except it's way, way poorly done. Or maybe it's not so much that it's poorly done. Like, you gotta imagine Watergate happened before the internet. Now we have the internet and the ability to analyze this as an international community, as opposed to just being like a group of journalists that were allowed and verified information and given. Now everybody has the access to verify and vet this kind of stuff and ask genuine questions. But ladies and gentlemen, this is me, Mudahar, and yeah, you know, this whole situation is, the longer it develops, genuinely, I will say, like, I don't really say this for everything, the worse it keeps getting. Like, holy fuck. If you like what you saw, ladies and gentlemen, please like, comment, and subscribe. Just like it if you dislike it. If you learned something, let me know. I am out.